So before we get into our predictions for some of the individual characters, I kind of realized something yesterday.
Mhm.
Um, with a couple of exceptions, like a lot of the issues were resolved at the end of the last season because now that every all the kids quit Cobra Kai, the rivalries now, you don't have Kenny and that rivalry necessarily with the LaRusso kid.
Yeah.
They're gonna have to work that out, but that whole thing, that dynamic I see changing. Kenny and Robbie, obviously that's not a rivalry anymore. Um, I don't know. It just seems like this is going to be a completely different dynamic this season
Yeah.
because now, okay, so the girl that you were talking about, the Kim Daeun, she's the instructor at Cobra Kai.
Yeah.
So is she out of a job? Is she going to connect with Kreese now that Kreese is out? But Kreese is kind of he's been cleared, but he also just kind of faked his own death and escaped prison. So is he going to have to go back to prison for escaping prison and assault? Like there's so many things up in the air, but the rivalries are different now.
Yeah. I think that's probably the biggest thing is I remember us talking about it. I can't remember if it was on the show or off the show,
Mhm.
that like Crease, if he had known what was going on, he could have just waited to be exonerated. But instead, he faked his own death. So now it's like, no, he's actually innocent, and now there's a there's a like a catalyst built up there, like now that he faked his own death, but really he's evading the law now. He's an escapee. So it's like
Right.
now his thing is that he's going to have to remain dead or assume another identity or kind of like fly under the radar. Like he could never be the face of a dojo again without getting caught and going back to prison for escaping prison, even though he was innocent. So that in itself is
Right.
kind of screwed up.
Yeah, that I think is going to be one of the most interesting things to see how they reconcile
Right.
that because obviously the show is called Cobra Kai, so there has to be some kind of continuing element. They're still invited to the Saikai Taikai.
Yeah.
So what happens to they got no students.
Well, yeah, that's like I haven't like I intentionally like did not look at other people's predictions
Yeah, same
or
here.
what they think might happen. I mean, I've seen like the trailers are like coming soon or whatever. It doesn't really show you anything. It just shows you the characters and
Yeah.
your beloved characters or whatever. But a couple of things that I want to like you said, everything was resolved, right? It's like it's almost like this could have been the end of the series, right? Um, Stingray comes clean. Um, Kreese is free one way or the other. Silver getting is being held accountable, so he's gone. Uh, both dojos, like adults and kids, all have seemed to resolve, except Robbie and Kenny. Like just remember at the end, Kenny was just like he saw like everything that he believed just go down the toilet,
Mhm.
and Robbie was like, "Hey man, like I'm sorry," and he's like, I need time," and he just walked away. So they didn't really resolve it. So you don't know if
Yeah.
he's actually going to contemplate it and come back to him after a while, and are they going to have it shift that way of like, yeah, like I see that I was being like indoctrinated. I was going down the wrong path. Let's be friends. Or if he's just going to get even more upset and be that catalyst to remain the rivals of Robbie and all the other kids and maybe start up
Right.
something else. Um,
Yeah,
I mean
because
that,
even Tori
yeah.
has kind of made some element of peace with Miyagi-Do. So
Well,
it seems
you
like
saw her
that could
getting.
kind of end, that rivalry could kind of end naturally based on that. I don't see that starting up again unless there's a catalyst, and I don't know what that catalyst could be.
Well, I mean, you saw her through the last season or two, kind of cracking a little bit. Like when they first introduced her, it was like she was hard ass. Like, nope, I'm like my way or the highway. And then as you start to see her character develop, you can see that she's conflicted. There's a softer side. The reason that she is the way she is because of her home life,
Yeah.
and so you start to see a softer side of her. And even when she's in Cobra Kai and she finds out Terry bribed the judge or the ref,
Mm.
and stuff like that. You could see her being conflicted. So at this point, I could see her more easily kind of shifting like all the other Cobra Kai students did to kind of rejecting that philosophy and being like, yeah, let's all work together. Like I can see her more than I can
Mhm.
see Kenny because Kenny seems really like a damaged character. Like I mean,
Yeah.
he went like full on. Like I mean, if you saw like how when they went to Cobra Kai, like Hawk, Robbie, even Miguel, like they turned like really like feral, but
Mhm.
you could still kind of be like, oh, this doesn't seem like them. I could see them turning back. Kenny was like they made his character, they amped it up like times 1,000. So it's really
Yeah.
hard for me to kind of like,
Well, it was his everything,
yeah. Well,
you
because I
know?
mean, he was bullied, he was picked on, he was like basically nothing,
Mhm.
which all of these characters were, but to him it seemed for him it seemed more extreme.
Yeah.
So I
Well,
think
he was targeted more, I think, than just being bullied. I mean, they were constantly going after him,
yeah,
you
which
know?
is really, really I mean that just sucks in general, like in
Yeah.
life. I mean the fact that like kids could be like that. I mean, I if I would do that kind of thing at work, I'd be in the HR office immediately, but yet
Well,
kids get to get away with it.
and it's sadly not unrealistic. I mean, that kind of stuff is very much a reality for a lot of people. But the one thing that did bother me is that it seemed like, um, the LaRusso kid, I can't think of his name right now, but he got punished, and they all got punished for what they did to Kenny, but we never saw those other kids again. It's like I feel like if there's any kind of thing that's going to happen, they need to bring those kids back. Like you had Leah, the girl that he was interested in, or that they were both interested in, which could be the continued conflict between them. But also like those other kids, the kid with the blonde hair that was just like the bully that really he needs to get his comeuppance at some point. I really want to see him come back in this season and get
Yeah.
what he deserves.
Yeah. There's always those characters, right? Where you're just like, man, I wish I could see him like take a fist right to the chops,
Right. Yeah. Yeah,
right? But
exactly.
yeah, it's Anthony.
Anthony. Yeah, that's right.
Character's Anthony. Yeah, I was like kind of blanking out too. But yeah, I think that that they made Kenny's character like so irredeemably damaged that it's that's the one thing where I wouldn't be surprised either way. Like if he came back from the brink because it's like he was so bullied and so um vulnerable that he turned completely evil. But I could also see him like deep down, like just like Hawk, right? Was had that vulnerable side to him, and then like finally was like, I don't want to be this angry person anymore. But I also wouldn't be surprised if he stayed the angry person.
Yeah, it could really go either way. And the other factor, of
Yeah,
course, is that we don't know the status of his brother and how that might influence because his brother got another month in juvie, but it seems like they've kind of surpassed the time where that would have been. So I would expect he's going to be getting out this season, and he may or may not even be in the season. I don't know, but that could also be a factor because his brother obviously is a hothead. So who knows how that might influence him too?
well, that's true because you've seen a lot of these shows and movies where you have like a younger and older brother dynamic, and it's usually the younger brother is trying to do something good, and the older brother is just stuck in his ways, and it's just like, nah, we're just going to keep doing things the same way that we've always done them, and we're going to just down that same wrong path. And because the younger brother looks up to him, he follows him anyways because that's just their relationship. And I like I said, I can think of like dozens of movies off the top of my head. Where's that the dynamic?
Well, and it's
Um,
also a theme on the show too, because if you look at how Kreese influenced Silver, and then you look at how Johnny coming back influenced Daniel's life, and
right.
it just seems like you pit two people together that have that ability to trigger.
Yeah.
That's been an ongoing theme through the whole thing.
Yeah. Hmm.
So that's going to be interesting. Something just occurred to me though, and I'm going to make a prediction I didn't write down, but I think somehow, and I don't know how it's going to work, I think somehow it's going to be Kreese is going to take control over Cobra Kai. He's going to get the students back. I think somehow he's going to get those kids back because it's not Cobra Kai they lost their faith in. It was Silver. So
Right.
if Kreese comes back without Silver and puts Cobra Kai back together somehow, with or without Kim Dae-un, I don't know. But she was disappointed that Kreese was gone. So she's got, that childhood tie to him too, from when they were training together. But I think the Saikai Taikai is going to be Kreese against Daniel and Johnny. I think it's going to be that rivalry that was always meant to be. I just don't know how they're going to make that happen.
Yeah, they seem to make Kreese's character kind of irredeemable, I think, because it's like anytime, even when you saw like I mean, you saw his past
Mhm.
in the flashbacks and like throughout the seasons and how he kind of became the way he is now. But when you see him now, even like when he was talking to the prison therapist and when he was being vulnerable with Johnny and everything, it's really always an act.
You do get that feel, yeah. I mean, I
Yeah,
think there were moments when they were doing the last therapy session where all the characters from the show were interacting with him. I
yeah,
think it was kind of getting to him, and he has had those moments where he's like during the last tournament where he had flashbacks about how he was treating Johnny and telling him to go cheat. And I think there were those moments of redemption, but I don't think his character overall is going to get
yeah.
redeemed. I think everybody has those moments of doubt or well, I wish I would have handled that better. But at
Right.
the end, you're still the asshole that you're the asshole.
Right, right. But I think that if he does come back, if you're right, and he does come back to revive Cobra Kai somehow, he would have to be doing it behind the scenes. It would have to be in secret because now this is the classic. Well, the world thinks I'm dead, so now I could
Right.
basically I can operate under cloak of darkness. I can do whatever I
Mhm.
want because now he's off the grid.
Yeah.
And I mean, like Daniel, Johnny, like the world, everybody thinks that he's gone. So what is he going to do with that? I mean, is
Well,
he
do
going to
they?
try and huh?
Do they?
Well, I mean,
Because
I
they kind
think
of left the end a little bit open because all we heard was that cops said, "Oh, you didn't hear what happened." But we don't, and then they showed him not being dead after that. But we don't know if they already knew he escaped by the time that cop got there and he told them, well, he got out and he's on the run, or if he told them that he was dead. We don't know what they know.
I feel like because the dramatic nature of the show, because it's very soap opera esque, that it's going to be that they think he's dead
Well,
because
that
they
and I'll back that up with the language that they use because in the show they've said several times, "Let me guess, he died again." So there's
hmm,
that ongoing theme about Kreese faking his own death. So I think that's probably more likely because they tend to really follow language clues in the show
well,
and
that's
follow up on
true.
that.
That's true because when he first came back at the end of the first season, they thought that he had died.
Mhm.
So, and that's actually something I didn't consider. So I wonder, so that could bring it in a different way. Is like the whole world could think he's dead, kind of like the Incredible Hulk, the guy that became
Right,
the Hulk,
yeah.
right?
But
Is
that
the
actually
world,
started in the third movie though, because when Silver came to Miyagi-Do to
yeah.
introduce himself, he said that Kreese had died. So that was actually where the beginning of the fake death came from.
Right, right. So, I mean, um, so does the world think he's dead, or do they think, well, there were, and you know what? Now that I'm thinking of it, they could be like, well, there was a report from the prison that all these doctors in the intensive care unit or whatever were found murdered,
Mhm.
and Crease is gone.
Yeah.
So they could put two and two together and be like you said, he's on the run. So
Mhm.
that actually would probably be more realistic because there's no
Yeah.
way that they would be like, okay, Crease's body is missing. There are a bunch of dead doctors in prison that were there in the room with him.
Yeah.
So ipso facto, he's
He's
got to
dead.
be,
He's just dead.
yeah, he's got to be, yeah, he's got to be dead. No, he's on the run. So actually, that might be more like now he's a fugitive, which is also kind of sad because you again you think about it, and if he just waited. he would have gotten out legally.
Well, that's the best part of the whole thing is that, with Stingray recanting, I mean, there would have been no reason for them to keep him in prison at
Right.
all. There wouldn't have been. So yeah, that's a fascinating twist. And I have to say, I just love the writing on this show.
Mhm.
It is so brilliantly done. There's so many moving parts, and there's only one continuity error that I
Okay.
can think of that I found. And it goes all the way back to the second episode of the series when Johnny first opens up Cobra Kai and Miguel is in his first lesson. He uses his inhaler because he has asthma, and Johnny knocks it out of his mouth and said, "You don't have asthma anymore." So either Johnny, and we never see it again. So either Johnny actually has the ability to cure asthma, or they just forgot about that completely, because I've never seen Miguel have a problem breathing no matter what. Not at the junkyard, not doing the cement truck. Like, never again did he have a breathing problem.
You know what? That is a really good point. I think that's probably one of those, and I mean, this happened a lot too, in like old TV series, where there's like a pilot or the first few episodes where something like that is developed, and then it's just kind of like it doesn't become central to the story, so they just kind of like sweep it under the rug,
Right.
and then it's not a thing anymore. So, yeah, maybe either somebody forgot about it or there was a conversation being like, all right, like the whole asthma thing is like, are we going to just keep doing this? Or are we going to, because I mean, I see what they were doing was they were trying to make Miguel look like a wimp. They were trying
Right.
to make him
Yeah.
look like, the dork with asthma who's, it's going to be a hard time for him to get in shape, blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
And, yeah, that's actually very interesting. But I've seen things like that like so much in TV series, be it character traits, like whole characters. Like you remember the maid on the first episode of the Golden Girls,
Oh yeah.
and then Coco, and then he just wasn't a thing anymore.
Right.
Probably because they're just like, okay, if like four middle-aged women have to live together to be able to afford to live, what the hell are they doing with like a gay maid?
I remember there was that David Kelly show, Boston, was it Boston Public, the one in the school where like he would just have these students that would come out of nowhere. You've never seen them before, and then they
Yeah.
would have a conflict and you'd never see them again. Like they
Yeah.
literally just came on to be a part of that one episode. Like at
Hmm.
least have some students that you see in the background every once in a while, and then they'll have a conflict, like make it a little bit more realistic. But speaking of unrealistic, I will say the cafeteria at the school that these kids go to on Cobra Kai has got to be the tiniest cafeteria for a school that we see in later seasons. It's actually a pretty large school with a lot of kids.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
those
it
those
is.
fight scenes in the school, there's a lot of kids that go there. But that
Yeah.
cafeteria looks like a closet, like a janitor's closet.
I mean, I would have to go back and look because I mean, I haven't watched any of the episodes like in a while at this point, but um that was not that never really stuck out to me. But I mean, I do know that for the purposes of the fight scenes and everything, yeah, it's definitely is a huge school. I mean, obviously, like you look at the whatever season it was where they had the all out school brawl, like that could not have happened in like a small local like
Right.
high school.
Yeah.
Like this place had like multiple floors, and
Mhm.
so maybe it was one of like a couple of cafeterias.
Could be. Yeah, it could
If you
be.
if you wanted to start like explaining it away.
I think it was really more of a budget thing, to be honest. I think that, there was no need for them to have this big hall or whatever. But as you expand the show, as you get more money, as the show is becoming more popular and you can do bigger things, it does take some of those earlier things and put them a little bit out of whack.
Mhm.
And,
Yeah.
and that happens. I mean, actually, the first season of The Office was filmed at a completely different location. They had to recreate the entire office for season
Mhm.
2 and beyond. And you really can't tell, but it actually was a completely different building.
Hmm. No, I didn't know that.
Yep, it's completely different studio lot. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think yeah, I mean we could go on and on just talking
Oh,
about
for
different
sure. Yeah.
different shows and like where there's like things have changed, whether they explained it or whether they didn't. And it's just
Yeah. Well, and
Um,
the other thing about I'll just say about The Office is in the first season there were a lot of characters in the background of The Office that you never saw again. There were
hmm,
just other faces that were there. They never spoke, they never had dialogue, but they
yeah,
were there. And then all of a sudden they're just gone.
yeah.
Kind of weird.
I mean,
Uh,
Brooklyn Nine-Nine is like that too. I don't know if you've
is
seen
it?
that.
I haven't. No.
It's very like Office, Modern Family, like
Okay.
um that type of show where you have the main characters in the police precinct, and of course you have people sitting at desks, other police officers, detectives walking in and out. But for all intents and purposes, like the main like five or six characters are the only ones that ever get any focus. So it's like sometimes they'll just be like, oh yeah, like Roger's over there, and then they'll show like one background character and be like, ah, and then you're just like, oh yeah, other people work here. It's not just these six people.
Right. Yeah.
But you never see or hear anything from them. They're all interchangeable. And occasionally, like one of them will be like, hey, I ate the last donut. So what? And then you never see him again.
And it's probably
You
like the
know?
people that work on the show, like the gaffers and, whatever,
Yeah.
that are just working there. And they're like, hey, we need you on set, to fill in some
Yeah.
background. So what I want to do, I was thinking it would be kind of fun to just like go through the characters and the situations and just do a prediction, see what you think could happen for each one. But I do want to precede that by saying when this show starts on July 18th, they're
Mhm.
only doing half of the final season.
Those
And I have heard that
bastards.
the final season is actually going to be like a season and a half long because they normally do 10 episodes a season. I think they're
Mhm.
doing 15 or 16 for the final one,
Nice.
but they're splitting it into two parts. So all the things that we're predicting could completely change after the first half. We have no idea. But for this point, we're just predicting for where the show's going to go because we really don't know.
Those bastards.
So I think that the element that most of the people want is to be, Mr. Miyagi. How much more can they tie into him? Because I feel like they've really, they've dug into the trenches of everything that he's done, and I don't really know how much more they can bring in. But one thing I've noticed in continuity is that they have repeated a lot of scenes from the various movies directly into the show. Like when Johnny gets beat up by Silver, and Miguel's at prom and he comes home and Johnny's drunk, and he's repeating Mr. Miyagi's lines with his own language, like come in, come inside, come inside. Everything that Mr. Miyagi said, the way he did those lines was exactly the way that Johnny did those lines. I kind of feel like I'm done with that. That's the one thing of the show where I'm like, this is just a little too unrealistic.
Yeah. I mean, I get the symbolism of it or
Mm.
paying tribute to the original movies, but I feel like if they're going to be going into a final season, like going out with like a grand finale type of thing, which by the way, I think that that's very effective now the way that shows are doing like the final season but like in two different parts because it
Yeah.
still creates this kind of drama. Like you can't just binge the whole thing and then
Right.
be done with it in like a couple of days. Like now they're making you wait, kind of old school, which I think is a kind of a good strategy these days to kind of like build up excitement, anticipation. But I think you're right. I mean, things since the start of the series, they've really tied it to the original movies, and it's gotten kind of like the connections have gotten like more and more tenuous, as Nate would say.
Mhm. Good Nate
And
word. Yeah.
I didn't know that word until he started using it on the show. Um, but I think at this point, it would probably be I would like to see them not like make those ties anymore, like to kind of stay in the present, or if they're going
Yeah.
to do them, make them very kind of background or subtle. Like, yeah, still have the picture, the portrait of Miyagi in the background. Maybe his war medal when you go into the into his dojo or into his room or whatever, but not really focusing on that as much. Maybe like the final episode, like we said, we don't know what's going to happen. Maybe the final episode or a final realization where Daniel has like an emotional flashback to like the first time they met or some memory, but really make it sparse. Like don't really because they don't at this point, I don't feel like they have to rely on those anymore. Like they really have a good thing going here.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think there will be like one big bang thing that will have to tie it all together. But I definitely think that, it's like he's been gone from the picture for a long time. I get that he's a huge influence, but it's like so much has changed. Everything's grown in different directions. It's like, yeah, he still looms over everything, but he's not a central character in the show.
Oh,
And I feel like
no.
a lot of it is just forced
I
that
mean,
they
he
keep
was at
pushing it in there.
first. Yeah, he
Yeah.
was at first. I mean, Daniel's desire to open up a dojo and get back into karate and the things that Miyagi taught him. Yeah, that was very organic in the first season, even couple of seasons. But after a
Right.
while, it's just like, all right, this. Yeah, he's gone. Like what more could, like you said, what more could they really milk out of this character? I mean, unless they had like a unless they started doing new scenes with an AI
Oh
Miyagi, you
God.
know?
And then the Kiss holograms show up and
And then Egon from Ghostbusters shows up, and then it's just like a whole kumbaya moment,
and we got to have some Princess Leia in there, because they've
Yep.
seen and Grand Moff Tarkin because they've CGI'd him now.
Oh my God.
So here's a big question, and I don't know how I feel about this. I think that she has to make an appearance somewhere. I feel like Allie's got to come back.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. Um, I don't know what she would be doing though.
I don't either, but I feel like they're going to go for broke. I think they're going to just pull out all the stops, and I don't know how they'll integrate it, but I feel like she's got to come back for something. Like maybe she'll come out to the Taikai Saikai or Saikai Taikai and just be there cheering them on, or maybe her kid will get involved. I don't know, but I feel like she's got to come back.
I mean, her as a potential love interest, I think is over
Yeah,
because I mean, Daniel is married, loves his wife. I don't see that changing. Johnny is having having starting a family with Carmen as well. So I mean, I feel like he's in that place where he's like, I'm not moving backwards, I'm moving forwards. So the only way I could see her coming back is probably what you said is that she has some kid, some relative um, that gets involved
yeah.
because her coming back the way she did, where her and Johnny met at that party or whatever, where it was like, will they or won't they, And I think that that's really past. I mean, to kind of like milk that a little further, I think would be stretching it. I don't think it would make for a good story.
I don't think they really could though, because I feel like they really tied that up as, hey, I'll always be your friend. I'm always here for you. Go do the right thing with this girl that you're interested in.
Yeah.
And I loved that episode. I think that was so great for them to be able to reconcile and, not
Mhm.
have all this bad blood. But I didn't feel that same thing with Daniel. Of course, Amanda was there versus Carmen not being there. So, and Johnny was isolated with Allie, so they could have that intimate conversation. But I didn't feel quite the spark between Daniel and Allie at all.
No, no, me neither. But I mean, I think they really brought it back to the fact that people didn't really think about it in the first movie was is that her and Johnny were together first. The
Right.
romance between her and Daniel happened like in the wake of their being an emotional teenage couple and like
Mhm.
breaking up or trying to work things out. And I mean, I've seen a lot of things over the years of like, if you really look at it, the reason that Johnny became such a dick and beat Daniel up was because he was just a hurt teenager trying to work things out with this girl, and he just kind of swooped in and like was basically making problems. So of
Right.
course he's going to try and get this girl back and be with her and kind of salvage whatever relationship they had. And that makes a lot of sense is that that Daniel was like basically the catalyst for that. He was getting in the way.
Mhm.
So when you look at the history of it, like those two met first, those two had a even if it was like a high school like 6 months, 1 year, however they've been together, they were together first. So they were the ones that really had more history.
Yeah.
And I'm
And
glad
I
that they brought that back to that.
I am too. And I love the way that they wove in some of those things, like that headband that Johnny wears was a gift from Allie. when you get those little tiny things can really make a difference. And then you find out that that's the headband that Johnny left in Carmen's bed, and Miguel finds it. And I'm like, Allie gave that to you. You know? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
like when you break those things down, and they're actually kind of funny, but I love those little details. And that goes back to the writing of the show. I just love all these little things that they've woven in to really make this such an interesting transition of characters and relationships and things. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, no, I do as well. I mean, and that was just one example.
Yeah.